Hey there, this is Jason Dunne with Sumo Logic. I'm a product marketing manager here, and today I'll be running through Sumo Logic for compliance use cases, as well as covering sort of the compliance itself of our platform. Um, so yeah, it looks like we've got a couple folks that have already joined, and I think in the next minute or two we'll start to see folks kind of join on. So yeah, I'm just going to kick things off with a couple of slides here, and then we can jump into the demo itself of the platform, and I'll show some use cases around how you can use Sumo Logic in order to better improve your compliance within your organization. So we'll spend some time in the platform itself after just a couple quick slides for kind of some context setting here. So yeah, as I mentioned, today we're going to focus on both kind of the audit and compliance side of Sumo Logic, and that's really on the sort of the platform itself of how we have built and designed our platform from the beginning to be very compliant and have all the compliance requirements based on what your needs are for your organization in order to kind of ensure that you're covering all those sort of requirements for your organization. Secondly, we will also cover use cases of how you can use the platform itself to kind of improve, your monitoring tactics so that you can understand what types of data sources are best tracked and how to actually navigate to that. So for anyone that's joined any of our sort of recent webinars, we've been running this series for, I think, probably close to a year and a half now. So you may have already joined for any number of webinars, even on sort of the non-security side of house. But in previous months, we've covered cloud security monitoring and analytics, cloud SIEM, cloud SOAR. Audit and compliance we haven't covered in a little while, so this is kind of a little bit of a newer session in a way, as we kind of get back into making sure that customers understand kind of what the best tactics are to utilize the security monitoring platform to really achieve their audit compliance requirements, and really think of it, hopefully help you to also think about it more as a compliance management or posture management effort, and really think about it a little bit more cohesively as to how you'd actually navigate that. So just a really quick note, again, for some of this might be a review if you've been for the cloud security monitoring session, that the Sumo Logic continuous intelligence platform is really designed both for observability as well as security. Today will be a little bit more focused on the security driven use cases. We have over 2,300 customers today that are utilizing the platform, and Sumo Logic itself is 800 plus employees. So just a large team really sort of ensuring both the security and compliance, but also the reliability and performance of the platform. And we have over 100,000 plus active users today that are utilizing the platform. So with that context, I'll kind of jump ahead here. So I think some of the common challenges that we see that we really help to address with our customers, or really kind of with some of our competitors, or even just open source solutions, there are situations where you're just not going to have a lot of cloud support, of not being able to bring in various data sources that are really aligned with what your requirements are. Or maybe you're a multi-cloud shop, for example. Sumo Logic really allows you to kind of navigate between AWS, Azure, and GCP as well. We also hear a lot from our customers from a compliance perspective about kind of slow cycles for compliance readiness. So we'll kind of talk about some of the ways in which we can help to speed that up. Very complex solutions, so jumping between a lot of different tools. Again, this is in line with the cloud support kind of challenges that can arise of for example, if you, like I mentioned, if you are a multi-cloud shop, you may be jumping between a tool that's specific to Azure or specific to AWS. We really allow you to navigate between those various sources. And then just price tag is certainly a big issue as well at times, where almost in line with the complexity issues, if you're having to utilize a lot of different platforms, it's always going to be a little bit more expensive than if you could consolidate under one roof. So Sumo Logic itself is a cloud native data monitoring solution. We really allow for rapid compliance readiness, which we'll talk about today by way of the demo itself. These are a few sampling. This is a sampling of some of the data sources that we can help you to bring into Sumo Logic. We're actually going to focus In the demo, I'm kind of more of a firewall driven use case, but just keep in mind that we can tackle really all of these categories, maybe in a few that aren't shown there. So there's a little bit different lines in that. So in some cases, it may be you're bringing in external products like your apps that are more customer facing. There could be SaaS IT that you're for example, Zoom data that you're looking to bring in and really ingest in the platform. Multi-cloud we kind of touched on, and then also on-premise as well for kind of a more traditional use case. And that's going to really enable you to perform security monitoring and security analytics in both scenarios, and really monitor and analyze at this level of granularity at the device IP network level. And I'll be able to show that to you in the demo itself. The platform itself is all of these things from a compliance perspective. It covers all of these. So PCI, SOC 2, TLS encryption in transit, we can absolutely provide all the documentation that you need, whether that's for compliance requirements or your own research or even privacy inquiries. So all of those things can be addressed in deeper documentation, but just sort of know that this is for sure covered by our platform. FedRamp authorized for moderate impact is also one of the levels of sort of best-in-class security and compliance that we provide as part of our offering for the continuous intelligence platform. So just we kind of tackle or chatted through some of the common challenges we see. So this is kind of in line with how do we actually address that. So when we think about cloud native scalability, a lot of it's going to come down to really being able to scale up quickly based on what our customer requirements are, as well as cover a variety of many different use cases or data sources that would come into the system. The rapid compliance readiness is really going to come down to the ability to utilize these dashboards to really understand quickly where your gaps are of knowledge and what aspects of your own product or your data are kind of the most vulnerable from a perspective of not really hitting on specific compliance requirements. Ease of use and flexibility really comes down to the ability to really kind of tailor the platform according to what your requirements are. I'm actually going to show a lot of out-of-the-box content today, but it can absolutely be customized based on your requirements. And then cost effective. So we have a credits-based pricing model, which allows you to really jump between all four of these solutions. So you don't necessarily have to pick and choose. You can decide what your requirements are and then align that based on the credits model. So just because we're going to touch on PCI during the demo, I just want to mention there are these 12 core requirements. Probably a lot of folks on this call today are familiar with them. So we'll kind of, I won't go through this list exhaustively, but I'll be able to show kind of some of the core, most common challenges or most common of the requirements that are addressed. And if you feel so inspired or feel inspired during the demo, feel free to just fire up sumologic.com/sign-up and you can kind of get off to the races that way. So with that, I'm actually going to just jump straight into the demo. I want to make sure we leave plenty of time as well, by the way, for questions. Feel free to hop into the Q&A or chat and just pop in any questions that you have so that we can make sure that we're actually addressing your questions live. Or also we're more than happy, of course, to follow up with the right kind of sales engineering resources to make sure that you have the questions answered that are kind of helping align with what your goals are. So yeah, just a quick kind of lay of the land here. So this is the Sumo Logic continuous intelligence platform. You can see here, you can go into the app catalog, see all the various things that are available to you just without having to do anything custom. You also have the ability to go into perform collection, decide what kind of data sources you want to bring in. Very easy to share out content with teammates or keep it private as necessary, depending on how you want to actually navigate and make things available to various teammates. So I'm going to just jump in here to sort of PCI requirement 1. So here we're looking at accepted and rejected traffic for Palo Alto Networks data in particular. And I think this is a really interesting use case to look at, because you're basically seeing these kind of patterns that kind of emerge between allowed traffic over time versus denied traffic over time, and really navigating and seeing there's kind of this alignment in this case of well, it's actually probably even best to look at it here of firstly a breakout of outbound versus inbound. We see allowed network by direction. We see allowed traffic over time, significantly higher count of allowed traffic over this Palo Alto Networks instance versus a much lower amount that's being denied. So that's kind of as expected. You can see the proportion here as things emerge, but this would be a really helpful time to, or really helpful place to look at kind of where the ratios might be unexpectedly high. Like in this case, we see it as very, very consistent. It looks like the allowed traffic or the denied or dropped traffic stays at a very consistent level. It's primarily allowed traffic over time. But if we saw a spike in denied or dropped traffic, that would be a really good indicator for us, both even from a DevOps perspective, but also from a security perspective, that, again, almost to jump back to PCI requirement 1 of installation and maintenance of firewall configuration, just a very concrete, specific scenario where you can actually provide both to your auditors or stay ahead of your compliance readiness needs, and really navigate to understanding where those firewall configurations maybe need to be adjusted based on what you're seeing by way of that. Another, and this is again aligned with PCI requirement 1, but we can also look here at traffic direction monitoring. So in this particular case, we're looking at traffic to cardholder environment and then outbound as well as inbound network activity. Just give that a moment to load. But in the meantime, we can also look at some of the queries that are underpinning this. So in this case, we're looking at the source category, which in this case, we're wildcarding on all Palo Alto Networks data. So just capturing all Palo Alto Networks data that's coming into the system. And we're saying only assign when this certain CIDR prefix is aligned with this kind of concrete 172.1.16 number, as well as various other identifiers. So we're kind of filtering out. You can imagine it can get really messy if we're dealing with kind of all firewall traffic that's coming in. So it's helpful to kind of filter out for just the most relevant data. And then over time, we're seeing this breakout by source host, and we're seeing for each of these, we're seeing various alignment of the number of instances for each of them. So I think that can just be a really helpful way to look at how you can actually, again, take out of the box content. You can always add back this query either to a custom dashboard that kind of just captures the most relevant panels, or you may decide that the out of the box content is the most aligned. You just want to have that overarching view all the time. So in this case, we're actually seeing some interesting data as well, just from in terms of what's sending outbound traffic versus what's receiving that inbound traffic. We're seeing that there's a higher instance of 10.10.22.13 of sending outbound traffic. So that may align with the expected configuration, but if that's not aligned with what you anticipated, then that would be for sure an instance where this dashboard would be a helpful way to identify that PCI requirement 1 may not be actually being covered in this particular case. So let's jump ahead. I'm gonna kind of stay within the scope of Palo Alto Networks data in particular. But let's take a little bit different lens, and we can just we can focus here. So we'll cover requirement 1 here as well, but also requirement 2 is all about not using vendor supplied defaults for passwords and other security parameters. So we start getting into the question of how do you kind of understand what kind of the access and privileges are as well. But more around requirement 1, we can see for sure that traffic by application over time. So we've been breaking things out by primarily IP, but also we can see here that the sort of application breakout, and specifically DNS, is showing us that there is the highest instance kind of across the board, at least for the last 15 minutes. So this is sort of as expected, but I think it's also, even if we just look at some of the sort of the more complete list, we would see that we also can see Jamf data, Kerberos data. Some of this may align with what you expect, some may not, but I think when you think about which applications have access to this network data, I think it can be really, really helpful as a breakout to consider of, okay, well, in this particular instance, we don't expect to see, for example, Facebook or Gmail data for whatever reasons that are required based on how you've configured your firewall. And this may indicate to you that something's amiss. And so that may be a situation where you want to actually find a way to go back and block that application moving forward and make sure that the configuration is set up so that how you anticipated it to work is very much aligned with how it should be working. So just a little bit of a lens into kind of how we can kind of navigate to various other requirements. I'm going to jump ahead here too. I think this can be really helpful. Look at kind of insecure data in transit. So we covered requirement 2 and talked through that a bit, but also here we can look at requirement 4, which is really about encrypting transmission of cardholder data. So in this case, we're actually seeing insecure allowed traffic by application, and we can see the most likely culprit in this particular case is Dell Sumo, device manager, as well as Facebook based. So those two are showing like a pretty large instance, and that might be an area of investigation to essentially ensure that, again, requirement 4 is being covered correctly, and that everything is in line with what you would expect there. And then as we progress through, we can also see network activity is basically broken down by unencrypted default port here. So, this is a really fast, quick, and easy way to look at kind of requirement 4 as far as understanding how that encryption of transmission and how data is being transmitted, and whether it's correctly being utilized in scenarios where it is not encrypted, right? So I think this is a really, really helpful scenario. Of course, there are scenarios where unencrypted traffic will pass through, and that may be expected behavior, but it can be really, really helpful to understand which ports that's occurring with. So maybe we expect that for 80 or 8080 because of the public nature of those ports. Maybe we're surprised by other ports that are popping up here. But just kind of one area of focus and consideration as you kind of navigate through. So just want to bump back into the app catalog here, and just kind of want to call out, I mean, we've really focused today primarily on Palo Alto Networks. So in this case, this is more of like a custom app install, but we can just show some quick previews of what you can expect as far as like the overarching posture management perspective that you can get. And we can work really closely with you to really build out those particular use cases. Whereas these are more out of the box. So AWS CloudTrail is also going to be an option for you, especially if you sign up for the free trial. You'll be able to kind of quickly pull these down and get a quick sense of how you would actually utilize these particular dashboards for this use case. So we covered Palo Alto Networks. Amazon VPC Flow for sure is going to be a really common scenario where kind of PCI compliance requirements you want to address that and make sure that it's buttoned up for audit season, and making sure that you are able to pull down the right reports to provide out to those audit teams in sort of a quick way. Do you want to call out Linux data as well? Because I think it can be a helpful kind of, I would call it sort of vanilla use case, where it could be any number of different scenarios where you're bringing in operating system data and you want to really be able to address that. So just want to call that out as kind of an additional. I'm happy to show this to you if folks have an interest in kind of getting a better sense of it. But that gives you a little bit of sense of what you can expect more on kind of the Linux side of house. And then sort of last but not least, since we did cover Palo Alto, would also be Windows data as well. So you have the option of selecting whether it's JSON or legacy Windows data that you're bringing into the system. The way in which you would do that once you've assigned legacy versus JSON is then you would also just decide what the correct data source or source category is that you want to assign here. And you're able to pull in any number of different data sources in that case. You can also set more advanced parameters here. But in that case, you'll be able to then cover all these various PCI requirements and have kind of that overarching view. Do also just want to shout out here really quickly that this is also utilizing our new style dashboard, which allows you to bring in metrics, and it just has various different new visualizations that come into play as kind of part of the design of how we have evolved our platform. So perfect. So it looks like we've got pretty solid list of attendees. So thanks so much for joining today. I do want to just kind of pop in the free trial link in case you don't currently have a login. You then would have the option to kind of navigate to that and just get off to the races quickly and actually be able to start building out your own use cases or even evolving some of this existing content based on what your requirements are. So again, yeah, thank you so much for joining today. I'll stay on for a couple minutes here in case there are kind of further questions that pop up. But in the meantime, thanks so much for joining. We'll also make this recording available if it's something you want to follow up with or take a closer look at sort of later in the month. We also run all of these demos monthly. So, we'll also have cloud security monitoring and cloud SIM and various other aspects of our solution that will be covered both in the scope of this week and future webinars for the upcoming month. So thank you again so much for joining. I'll stay on for a minute or two here, and really looking forward to seeing you in future sessions. Have a great one.